and welcome to a special edition of Derek's Zoo Videos. It took until my 29th video, but for the first time on my channel, it's not a highlights video and it's not an exhibit tour. Since you already saw the title and the thumbnail, you know that today I'll be discussing my top 10 favorite zoos that I've visited so far. Many of them I've already featured on my channel, but there's also some I haven't. In my 21 years of visiting zoos, which I started when I was just 2 months old, I've managed to visit 26 zoological facilities, 18 of which I deem to be proper zoos. In the interest of keeping this video a reasonable length, and because I really recommend visiting each and every one of these facilities, I'm going to be keeping this positive. So I'll get the disclaimer out of the way now and say that obviously no zoo is perfect, and they all still have things they could improve. With that said, let's not waste any more time and get started with a few honorable mentions. 3 facilities that didn't quite make my top 10, but I couldn't resist giving a mention. First, I have to give a shout out to Binder Park and the exhibit we just toured. The Savannah alone makes this zoo worth visiting. The Fort Wayne Children's Zoo has spectacular landscaping throughout its 3 main realms, all of which feature at least a few lesser known species. The Pittsburgh Zoo and Aquarium is an all-around solid facility with a nice mix of older and newer attractions. Like Fort Wayne, there's some rare species here, like the country's only elephant seals. And now, beginning with number 10, the Milwaukee County Zoo. 200 acres set into a beautiful woodland site. It's listed as being established in 1892, but didn't open at its current site until 1961. I believe many of the major outdoor habitats were constructed around this time, including my favorite section of the zoo, Africa, Asia, and South America. The zoo's central hub of exhibits, where you can still find many of their larger species. What makes this area stand out is the 4 not so common anymore panorama-style predator-prey exhibits. 2 African-themed and 1 each for Asia and South America, where big cats roam behind their prey, in a setup that makes it appear as though the felines and their prey share the same space. This area also contains the zoo's new Hippo Haven, which brought crystal clear underwater viewing of hippos to Milwaukee for the first time as the second phase of the newer Adventure Africa, the first phase of which was a much improved modern home for their elephants. Milwaukee is also home to one of the best birdhouses I've seen in the form of the Herb and Nada Mahler family aviary, which begins with lively cold weather penguins and also features an impressive free flight aviary. Next up at number 9, the Indianapolis Zoo, one of the nation's newer major zoos at only 34 years old. The Indy Zoo is making a name for itself with its unique exhibit designs. Most notably the zoo's centerpiece, the International Orangutan Center, which foregoes normal habitat design in favor of a functional approach that allows the orangutans to live the high climbing life they were made for, with the Hootan Trail, an 80-foot high series of aerial cables and towers. The zoo is already planning their next innovative design, which will be a multi-habitat complex for chimpanzees. The Plains section offers a more standard visitor experience, highlighted for me by a top-notch facility for their African elephants, where the zoo's herd of 5 can rotate between 2 large yards seemingly connected by a massive pool at the front. In 2020, the facility was expanded to include the Tembo Camp, where the keepers give daily demonstrations, after which guests are actually invited to meet the elephants themselves. Almost every popular large mammal can be found at the Indy Zoo, and even some less common large mammals can be found in the oceans. The daily dolphin presentations are a highlight of any visit, and although I wasn't able to see them on my last visit, Indianapolis is one of the few places in the US to display the Pacific walrus. Moving down to Kentucky for number 8, the Louisville Zoo, a good-sized zoo at over 130 acres. In my first Louisville tour, I said the best way to describe this zoo is unique, which really every zoo is unique in some way. I say that about Louisville though, mostly because of the zoo's innovative exhibit designs. Gorillas, colobus monkeys, snow leopards, and bears can all move through overhead tunnels. In addition, for me at least, the zoo's collection includes a number of less common zoo animals. On my last visit, I saw Malayan tapirs and babirussas for the first time in more than a decade. There's also the long-legged maned wolf and the adorable pygmy hippopotamus, who actually seem to be becoming more common in the US. The first area of the zoo that really stands out is the islands, a revolutionary concept when it opened that rotates 5 rare Southeast Asian mammals through 4 exhibits, offering the animals multiple habitats to explore and the enriching sense of other species to investigate. There's also little blue penguins, and a number of tropical birds can be seen inside the island's pavilion. In 2011, the Glacier Run modernized the zoo's polar bear and seal exhibits. The complex offers an immersive experience being designed as an abandoned mining town that's been taken over by bears. The zoo's largest section is still Africa, where you can find many of the zoo's star animals like rhinos, lions, and elephants. The exhibits in this area are more old-fashioned, which for the most part I don't mind here. At number 7, our first Ohio classic, the Cleveland Metroparks Zoo. 6 major attractions spread out over roughly 180 acres. The first highlight actually comes before the main entrance to the zoo, with the rainforest. A 2-story building that transports visitors into the tropical forest of the world. The lower forest is home to numerous reptiles, including the rare gharial crocodile, as well as the immersive tropical rainstorm exhibit, which sees a simulated storm occur every few minutes. The upper forest has more popular species like small felines, orangutans, and adorable otters. Just inside the entrance you can find the fantastic African elephant crossing, split into 2 good-sized habitats known as the Savannah and Mopani ranges, which the elephants actually walk over the guest path to transfer between. Like Indianapolis, this is another of my favorite places to see these giants. The zoo's other top area is the Wilderness Trek, the only place I ever seem to see awake beavers. It is also still home to an impressive 5 species of bears. An interesting mix of older and modern designs, this area has received some recent rejuvenation with the Tiger Passage in 2016, Asian Highlands in 2018, and coming in 2023, the Bear Hollow, 4 habitats that will nearly triple the space offered for their Andean and sloth bears. Staying nearby in Ohio for number 6, the Toledo Zoo and Aquarium. This is one where nostalgia definitely plays a role in my fondness for this zoo. I said in my first Toledo tour that visiting this zoo is a big reason rhinos and hippos are my favorite animals, and here's some proof. There's 6-year-old Derek following one of the zoo's hippos around their pool. That being said, it should come as no surprise that the Tembo Trail is still my favorite area of the zoo, even if it has lost its African theme. Every trip to Toledo starts big with polar bears, who always seem to be active when I visit. There's also a solid Great Apes complex with multiple orangutan families. But what really makes the Toledo Zoo stand out is the fantastic indoor exhibits. The aviary and the reptile house are a bit older, but still display impressive collections of scaly and feathered creatures. The aquarium was renovated and reopened in 2015 as an excellent modern display of aquatic life. Most impressive of all is the ProMedica Museum of Natural History. The lower floor has life-size replicas of now extinct animals, while upstairs you can find more reptiles, including an entire room of venomous snakes, as well as a room for invertebrates highlighted by massive coconut crabs. Moving into the top 5, ZooTampa at Lowry Park, the only zoo on this list that I haven't been to in the last few years. However, my first and so far only visit was very memorable, as after waiting for 45 minutes, I had the opportunity to meet the zoo's at the time 8-month-old white rhino calf. The main structure of the zoo hasn't changed much since my visit, but it hasn't needed to. ZooTampa's biggest strength is their incredible collection of rare species. There's Malayan tapir, babirussa, lowland anoa, sun bears, and gharials, and that's just in the Asian gardens. Safari Africa has popular animals like giraffes, elephants, and rhinos, as well as lesser-known species like the secretive okapi, pygmy hippos, and the prehistoric-looking showbill stork, which can only be seen at a few facilities in the US. At the time of my visit, I was seeing a number of these animals for the first time, and many of them I haven't seen much, if at all, since. Like many Florida facilities, ZooTampa frequently takes in rescued manatees and displays an excellent collection of native wildlife with more rarities like Florida panthers and red wolves. Back in my home state for number 4, the Detroit Zoo. The Detroit Zoo is credited as being one of the first in the country to utilize mostly barless habitats instead of cages. That progressive mindset has continued into the modern day, where you can find countless massive habitats around the zoo. A number of these have come from combining multiple exhibits into a single space. For example, in 2018, the zoo combined 3 standard bear grottos into a much larger, more naturalistic grotto for their grizzly bears. While this does reduce the overall number of species displayed, which I know can be disappointing, it's hard to argue that larger exhibit spaces isn't the way to go. In many ways, the zoo is actually stuck with a more old-fashioned exhibit design, using large rock walls and moats to enclose their habitats. As a photographer, I actually quite like this, as it means there's no glass or mesh between me and the animals I'm taking photos of. Shouting out a few of the zoo's best attractions, the Arctic Ring of Life now features sea otters and is still one of the top polar bear habitats in the US. The Polk Penguin Conservation Center is home to 5 species of these Antarctic birds, with spectacular underwater viewing. The 4-acre Great Apes of Harambe rotates a bachelor group of gorillas and a troop of 12 chimpanzees through 2 massive outdoor habitats. Finally, Amphibiville is one of the very few facilities to give these unique life forms the spotlight. Number 3, a place I visited for the first time this year, the Memphis Zoo. The first thing that comes to mind when you think of Memphis is the theming, which helps make each section of the zoo feel like its own epic adventure. I just recently showed off what has got to be the most complete collection of big cats in the US. And shout out to the Memphis Zoo for having great info about their individual animals on their website, which makes my research really easy. Close by is the Animals of the Night Nocturnal Building, a feature not many zoos have, where you can find a host of rare small mammals. Similar to Cat Country, Primate Canyon features an impressive collection of primates, including 3 types of great apes. The Zambezi River Hippo Camp is easily my new favorite habitat for hippos, being 2 to 3 times the size of most of the other ones I've seen. And I was lucky to be able to see their weekly feeding demonstration with their Nile crocodiles. At the farthest point from the entrance, there's 2 top quality North American sections, which I unfortunately didn't get much footage of. The Teton Trek is modeled after the ecosystems of Yellowstone National Park, highlighted by one of the largest and best bear exhibits I've ever seen. Polar bears and sea lions are the star residents of the Northwest Passage, which welcomes guests with towering totem poles and features displays highlighting native cultures. Finally, the biggest reason I came to Memphis is China, another spectacularly themed area that shows off the architecture and culture of, well, China. An area that I can't wait to show in more detail on its own tour eventually. And I'm glad I came when I did, since with their 10-year agreement with China coming to an end, Memphis has announced that giant pandas Yaya and Lele will be returning to China in 2023. They may have been the area's main attraction, but there is also other don't-miss species like the Pierre David's deer and Sulawesi black-crested macaque. Back in Ohio for number 2, the Cincinnati Zoo and Botanical Garden. The Cincinnati Zoo was once dubbed the sexiest zoo in America due to their reputation for breeding some of the world's most endangered animals. I consider myself very lucky to have had the opportunity to see the last Sumatran rhinos outside of Southeast Asia. Although some of the rarer species like the rhinos have moved on, Cincinnati is still home to a few rare gems, like the country's only aardwolves. Cincinnati is not the largest of zoos, currently sitting on 75 acres, but the zoo makes excellent use of their space, filling it up with around 20 different exhibit areas. The two that stand out to me the most are Africa and the Jungle Trails. Africa is of course home to the zoo's celebrity hippo stars, a family that has grown twice since my last visit. There's also a smaller but very lively mixed species savanna and a few of the zoo's best designed habitats. The Jungle Trails is an indoor-outdoor complex that focuses on primates and immerses visitors in the rainforests of Africa and Asia. Like Memphis, Cincinnati has one of the country's few nocturnal houses with night hunters, which highlights small felines and other smaller predators. Since invertebrates usually get almost completely left out of most zoo collections, it is worth noting that Cincinnati has an entire building known as World of the Insect dedicated to these life forms, and this is one of the few places outside of Florida to display manatees. I also commend Cincinnati for continuing to address their more outdated exhibits. Since my first visit, the zoo has built new homes for big cats and transferred an old-fashioned snow monkey island into modern homes for bald eagles and giant tortoises. Next up will be a new habitat for bears and then elephants. And finally, my #1 favorite zoo, the Columbus Zoo and Aquarium. This is as close to a perfect zoo as I've seen. For starters, the place is huge, almost 600 acres. Like Memphis, the theming here is fantastic, helping to immerse visitors into each region of the zoo, every one of which has at least a couple world-class habitats. If you're like me, your journey will begin in North America, where the more common North American fauna are complemented by types not commonly seen in zoos like Alaskan moose and wolverines, while the polar frontier takes you to the edge of the Arctic to see polar and brown bears. Within a few steps, you're transported to the Ajabu National Park in the heart of Africa, the zoo's largest section by land size, with over half of it dedicated to a single colossal multi-species savanna that, on its own, is about the size of some of the smaller zoos I've visited. Closer up, the watering hole rotates a number of species and is also the stage for the daily cheetah runs. Asia Quest has popular species like elephants, tigers, and red pandas, but also features a number of lesser-known species from Asia's central regions like the spiral-horned markhor, Pallas's cat, and sloth bear. The zoo's other half begins with the shores, another of the few places outside of Florida where you can find manatees, as well as a top-quality reptile house. A second African section, the Congo Expedition, has gorillas, bonobos, elusive okapis, and the country's only African leopards. And last is Australia and the islands, appropriately split into two sections, one featuring Australian fauna like kangaroos, koalas, and Tasmanian devils, and the other exhibiting Southeast Asian natives like orangutans, gibbons, and playful small-clawed otters. If you're wondering why I just described virtually the entire zoo, it's because everything here is a must-see in my opinion. I hope to visit Columbus again next year to film tours and show in more detail why this is my favorite zoo. And that concludes the list. Be sure to comment below, what are your favorite zoos? Once again, thank you for watching and supporting my channel through my first year of videos, and enjoy this sneak peek of the first exhibit tour coming in 2023.